Chapter 6, Ancient Greece. The land of ancient Greece extended south into the Mediterranean Sea. It was a mountainous land. Ancient Greece also included a large number of islands in the Mediterranean. The ancient Greeks built colonies in places outside of Greece, such as the coast of Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey, which can be found here. To help you get to know this region, carry out the following activities. Describe this region. How would you describe the land of Greece by looking at it on this map? How would you compare the land of Greece to that of the United States? Pause the video, think about it for a few seconds, and come back with your answers. Think about the people. From the map, make some guesses about how the people of ancient Greece earned their livelihood. What role did the sea probably have in their lives? Why do you think some Greeks left ancient Greece to build cities elsewhere? Pause the video and think about this. When you're ready, come back and we'll start Chapter 6, Section 1. Chapter 6, Section 1. The Rise of Greek Civilization. What makes the community where you live in special? What makes it a community? Does it have traditions and customs of its own? What are they? What does your community share with its neighbors? Questions to think about as we study the rise of the Greek civilization are: how did the geography influence the development of civilization in Greece? And 2, how did democracy develop in Athens? Key terms that will be described for you through the Google Classroom: peninsula, epic, acropolis, city-state, aristocrat, tyrant, and democracy. Key people and places will be Homer, Solon, and Troy. Please don't forget to have your Google Doc open through the Google Classroom to complete and answer questions. And when you have finished the video and completed and answered all of your questions, make sure to submit through the Google Classroom. First, there was nothing. Then came Mother Earth. The gods of night and day appeared next, and then starry sky. Earth and sky created the 12 Titans. These great gods rebelled against their father Sky and took away his power. The youngest of the Titans, Kronos, ruled in his father's place. In time, Kronos had 6 children. The youngest, mighty Zeus, toppled Kronos from his throne. With such words, the people of ancient Greece described the struggles of their gods. Like their gods, the people of Greece had to struggle for power and independence. Their struggles began with the land itself. Greece's geographic setting. The land of Greece looks as if the sea had smashed it into pieces. Some pieces have drifted away to form small rocky islands. Others barely cling to the mainland. Greece is a peninsula made up of peninsulas. A peninsula is an area of land surrounded by water on 3 sides. This would be an example of a peninsula. As you can see, no part of Greece is very far from the sea. Mountains are a major landform of Greece. Greece's islands are mostly mountainous peaks. Mountains wrinkle the mainland, so there are only small patches of farmland. Only about 1/5 or 20% of Greece is good for growing crops. No wonder the Greeks became traders and sailors. At times, they even left Greece to found colonies far away. What was life like for people living in Greece 3,000 years ago? In a way, the ancient Greeks were all islanders. Some lived on real islands completely surrounded by water or on small peninsulas. Others lived on land islands. Mountains cut off these small communities from each other. The geography of Greece made it hard for people from different communities to get together. For this reason, it is no surprise that the ancient Greek communities thought of themselves as separate countries. Each one developed its own custom and beliefs. Each believed in its own land, traditions, and way of life were the best. And each was more than ready to go to war to protect itself. In fact, for most of their history, the Greeks were so busy fighting amongst themselves that it is easy to forget that they shared a common heritage, spoke the same language, and worshipped the same gods. Greek beginnings. All Greeks shared a wealth of stories and myths about their origins. The myths explain the creation of the universe and the features of nature. They describe the adventures of Greek heroes and gods. Various stories told how cities and traditions came to be. The most important stories told about the Trojan War, a long struggle between Greece and the city of Troy on the west coast of Asia Minor. All the great heroes from both regions joined in the war. The Trojan War. The story of the Trojan War has everything a story should have: great battles, plots, schemes, loyalty, and betrayal. According to the myths, a prince named Paris from the wealthy city of Troy was the guest of the Greek chieftain named Menelaus. Breaking the law of the gods, Paris kidnapped Menelaus' wife Helen and took her to Troy. To get Helen back, the Greek chieftains sent a huge army to attack Troy. For 10 long years, the war dragged on. Many heroes on both sides perished. At last, the Greeks conquered Troy by a trick, the Trojan horse. The Greeks burned and looted Troy and then returned home. 2 epics, or long poems about the Trojan War, survive today. They are the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad tells about a quarrel between Greek leaders in the last year of the war. The Odyssey describes the adventure of the hero Odysseus as he struggles to return to his homeland from Troy. These epics may have been composed by many people. They are credited to a poet called Homer. Oh, not that Homer! There he is. That's much better. This is Homer. The poems were important to the Greeks. They taught them what their gods were like and how the noblest of their heroes behaved. Today, people think these poems came from stories memorized by several poets and passed down by word of mouth through many generations. Homer may have been the last and greatest in his line of poets who told about the Trojan War. The Dark Ages of Greece. Not long after the end of Troy, civilization in Greece collapsed. No one knows exactly why. Life went on, but poverty was everywhere. People no longer traded for food and other goods beyond Greece. They had to depend on what they could raise themselves. Some were forced to move to islands and to the western part of Asia Minor. The art of writing disappeared. These years, from the early 1100s BC to around 750 BC, have been called Greece's Dark Ages. Without writing, people had to depend on the word of mouth to keep their traditions and history alive. Old traditions were remembered only in the myths that were told and retold. Greece's Dark Ages were not completely bleak, however. During this time, families gradually began to resettle in places where they could grow crops and raise animals. Some of these family farms may have developed into villages. When they chose places to build their farms, people favored places near rocky, protected hills where they could be safe from attack. The name for such a place was an acropolis, meaning high city, and this would be an example of an acropolis. Governing the city-states. Sometime around 750 BCE, villages in small areas probably joined together to form a city in the shadow of an acropolis. At that time, each city began to develop its own traditions and its own form of government and laws. Each one was not only a city, but also a separate independent state. Today we call these tiny nations city-states. Each included a city and the villages and fields surrounding it. Hundreds of Greek city-states grew up, each more or less independent. Aristocracy. Nobles rule. The earliest rulers of city-states were probably chieftains or kings who were military leaders. By the end of Greece's Dark Ages, most city-states were ruled by aristocrats, who are members of the rich and powerful families. Aristocrats controlled most of the good land. They could afford horses, chariots, and the best weapons to make themselves stronger than others. A new type of ruler. As the Greeks sailed to foreign ports trading olive oil, marble, and other products, the city-states became richer. A middle class of merchants and artisans developed. They wanted some say in the government of their cities. These people could not afford to equip themselves with horses and chariots for war. However, they could afford armor, swords, and spears. With these weapons, large groups of soldiers could fight effectively on foot. Gradually, military strength in the cities shifted from aristocrats to merchants and artisans. As a result of these changes, aristocratic governments were often overthrown and replaced by rulers called tyrants. A tyrant was a ruler who seized power by force. Tyrants are usually supported by the middle and working classes. Today we think of tyrants as being cruel and violent, and that was true of some Greek tyrants, but others ruled quite wisely and well. Democracy, rule by the people. Eventually, the people of many city-states overthrew tyrants who were too harsh. A few cities moved to a form of government called democracy. In a democracy, citizens govern themselves. The city-state in which democracy was most fully expressed was Athens. About 594 BC, a wise Athenian leader called Solon won the power to reform the laws. Solon was well known for his fairness. His laws reformed both the economy and the government of Athens. One of his first laws canceled all debt and freed citizens who had been enslaved for having debt. Another law allowed any male citizen of Athens aged 18 or older to have a say in debating important laws. These laws and others allowed Athens to become the leading democracy of the ancient world. However, not everyone living in ancient Athens benefited from democracy. Only about 1 in 5 Athenians was a citizen, so that's only 20%. Some of the people living in Athens were enslaved. These people did not take part in democracy, nor did women and foreigners. But the men who were citizens of Athens were free and self-governing. This is the end of Chapter 6, Section 1. At this point, you should be able to answer a few questions. The first, describe the 3 kinds of governments that developed in the Greek city-states after the Dark Ages. 2, what group of Athenians benefited most from democracy, and why? And finally, how did the mountains in Greece contribute to the rise of city-states? If you can answer these questions, please also make sure that you have completed your Google Doc and have submitted through the Google Classroom. And we'll see you in class tomorrow. And as always, remember, be excellent to one another.